Two parallel stories will show us the early years for both Superman and Mongul, showcasing the lessons that they've learned from their respective mothers. But what are those lessons? And how will they define our hero and villain for what is to come? Action Comics 2022 Annual Issue Number 1 manages to capture the two childhoods for both Superman and Mongul in a way which makes both characters somewhat similar in a sense. More specifically, when it comes to both of their respected relationships with their mothers. Now, obviously, both Philip Kennedy Johnson and Cy Spurrier are not trying to say that, we should feel bad for Mongul. Instead, we get to know a young Mongul before his first kill. And surprisingly, he's not a monster. He's actually pretty nice. And so perhaps if Mongul had a different mother who raised him, let's say Martha Kent, maybe Mongul wouldn't have turned into the tyrant that he is, in the current present. Whereas Clark, the same what-if question is asked as well. What if Clark, instead of Earth, was sent to Warworld to be trained by Mongul's mom? Well, no doubt Clark would have turned out much, much different. It's a great question to ask, yet the way the writers ask this question, it's more so in a way where they don't actually ask it. Rather, they show us this compelling take of nature versus nurture. Yes, Superman is good, and yes, Mongul is bad, yet it's how both characters were raised which helps shape them into, who they are today. In other words, people aren't born evil or good. Rather, it's what you do. It's what you learn and how you come to learn it. It's what makes you a hero or villain. When it comes to the book's art, Dale Eagersham and Anne Churchill take on the pages for this annual issue, and both artists are able to differentiate themselves very well, especially since two stories are being told at the same time. And what's great about this book having two artists is the fact that two stories are taking place. Thereby, each style for each story can have its own identity. Plus, when you have the book's colors done by Lee Luffridge, you're bound to get some color work that depicts the book's vibe. Thereby, it offers warmth and coldness for the stories, which is perfect representation for the issue's subject. Overall, Action Comics Annual 2022 was a fantastic one-shot that took a break from the current Warworld Saga in a means of trying to show us the similarities that both Mongul and Clark share. And if things were different, perhaps Mongul would be our Superman and Clark Kent be the villainous Mongul. Action Comics Annual 2022 gets a 9 out of 10. Our story begins with Superman hovering above the city of Metropolis, and while doing so, Clark is reflecting back on the words taught to him by his mother, where Martha was telling Clark to remember the little things in life, because little things, in time, they tend to grow, and though it may seem like a slow process, you won't notice it until it's too late to change a thing. Now, what does all this mean? Well, check it, because what Martha Kent is saying is that Clark has been using his powers during soccer games, little things like using his super breath. So basically, in other words, cheating. Now, one of the boys who Clark beat in soccer, well, his name is Caleb Withers, and it's quite apparent that this kid is angry, for he's quite angry because he suspects Clark cheated somehow. Now, another thing to keep in mind is that Caleb is essentially the bully of Smallville, so he'll basically say anything to anyone, such as calling Martha Kent fat. Now, at the same time, on the planet of Warworld, we see a young Warzone, a young Mongul, getting beat up by his mother, warning her son for not striking from behind. And because now that you failed and wanted to fight honorably, we're now to go into exile. Because of your cowardice towards taking a life, we now have to suffer within the Galiffian wastes. So, thanks, dude. So it's obvious that Mongul's mother is a pretty intense person. Basically, if you talk shit to her, then you're gonna get stabbed. And so with that, both mother and son begin their journey within the deserts of Warworld. Back in Smallville, the bully Caleb, after being berated by his terrible drunken father for not winning the game, calls out to Clark, calling him a cheater. And from there, he kicks the ball directly towards him. But rather than hitting Clark, the ball hits Martha. But not only does it hit Martha, her wig falls off, because apparently Martha is undergoing cancer treatments. Now, Clark is all about beating the shit out of Caleb, but Martha holds him back, reminding him that real strength isn't about knocking things down or proving who's stronger. Real strength is about getting back up. However, this sort of advice doesn't particularly jibe with a young Clark. And so later on during the middle of the night, unable to get to sleep, Clark heads out to go after Caleb. Now, once Clark reaches his house, Caleb's drunk father is heard pounding on his son, beating him up for not winning the game. Because now that he lost, he thinks the people within the community will view him as some terrible father or something wretched. But that's not really the case, because he's obviously a terrible father for being just a jackass. But I digress. From there, the dad leaves the house and starts driving away. And not only is he just driving, he's driving drunk, which is a huge no-no. And like, holy crap, this guy doesn't care. He's just driving through cornfields, like there's no fucks given. However, once the man falls asleep at the wheel, we come to find out that it was Clark who was able to prevent an accident from occurring, as it's shown that Clark basically moved the truck and Caleb's dad away from all the incoming traffic, to which then Clark brings Caleb's dad to the hospital so that he can get some help. As Clark makes his way past the windows, through the blinds, he sees his mom and dad, where Martha is undergoing some treatment. Yet despite the fact that cancer sucks and is pretty hard to beat, Martha is still upbeat. She's looking at it positive and she's sounding hopeful, more so than ever before. Because according to her, in life you have to roll with the punches. For when you can't rely on the stuff that you took for granted, that's when you start to see the important things, the little things, that you never knew were there. Back on Warworld, we continue with Mongul and his mother's exile. And it's here where she promises her son that she will teach him the Warzone path so that when they return, he can have his vengeance and claim Warworld for his own. And through their time, Mongul's mom teaches him many things, like staying clear of the pools that smell of fuel. Or, if you smell blasting power on the wind, then you should probably find a new path. But above all, be silent and watch, because it's here where the woman starts eating this pinkish slime. But with every bite she takes, she leaves one bit behind, as a means of distracting the vermin, all in an effort to, not get eaten. Now, Mongul's mom refuses to share with her son, telling him that, if you want to eat, then you have to fetch food yourself. And upon seeing a pack of the Warworld wolves stalking them for food, Mongul does exactly what his mother says, as he later brings over a wolf carcass for the two of them, so that him and his mother can eat and regain their strength for the long road ahead. But suddenly his mother punches him in the face. And the reason for this is because from her point of view, Mongul isn't living the Warzone lifestyle, simply due to him sharing. It's that sort of stuff like being nice and sharing is viewed as an insult within their culture. For the Warzone chooses his life above all. For that is why the Warzones endure where others can't. Afterwards, we pick back up on another day of soccer. And it's here where Clark is using the lessons he learned from his mom into effect. Because as we see Caleb making fun of him, Clark immediately, rather than make a fist, he releases it, thus deciding to be the better person. However, that's when the other kids begin to poke fun at Caleb's dad, making fun of him for being a drunk and someone who's basically trash. Now, although all that is true, at the end of the day, the man is still his dad, and so it bothers him. But it affects him more so because Caleb's dad is the reason why Caleb is such a jerk. And because he's the good guy, Clark walks back over and tells everyone to stop making fun of Caleb. And despite Caleb getting in Clark's face, saying he doesn't need his help or anyone's sympathy, that's when Clark tells Caleb that you're not your father, and that you don't have to be like him. And this causes Caleb to cry. But Caleb isn't alone, as Clark is sure to embrace Caleb with comfort, a hand on shoulder. And with Clark putting the lesson to use, proving it to be an act of kindness, an act which can possibly change Caleb for the better, among the distance, we have Ma Kent looking out onto the field, proud to see her son providing kindness to those who may not even have ever had it before. Meanwhile, in Warworld, both Mongul and his mother are in the middle of a battle against a tribe who have staked claim to the area that they are currently residing in. But before the tribe can strike Mongul and his mother, off in the distance, the roars from a bull mammoth are shouted, and from there the beast launches itself in the rubble and immediately attacks the group. Now, while the beast is distracted with killing off the other Warzones, Mongul's mom picks up a rock and begins to charge at it. But in doing so, one of the spikes from the creature impales the mother right through the gut. But luckily, this gives Mongul the chance to do his thing, as he jumps into the monster's mouth. And from within, very much God of War 3 style, Mongul is able to murder the crap out of the monster like a true badass. Now, seeing that she's mortally wounded, Mongul's mom gives him a knife to essentially end her life with, because at the end of the day, a Warzone does not protect. And wondering why she tried to save him, she admits that she did this so that Mongul can kill his father. Thus, Mongul lifts up his mother's dagger and from there, kills her, completing his lesson. Back in Smallville, Clark Kent's world is filled with happiness, because it's here where Martha is free to go. For her positive attitude and determination was enough to defeat cancer. But while the Kent family are celebrating this victory, they get a visitor, that being Caleb. Now, Caleb tells Mrs. Kent that he's going to go to Metropolis to live with his aunt. But before he leaves, he wanted to apologize, for he felt ashamed, laughing at her the other day And so, as a way to show his respect, Caleb shaved his head to show his support. Caleb wanted to showcase an act of kindness. But Caleb's journey wouldn't end here, because later on in Metropolis, many years later, once Clark is Superman, we see an adult Caleb spending his time with helping kids at the Community Outreach Center in Metropolis, a place where kids can have a better life and where they can learn to be better as people within a world that's just so scary. Because sometimes people just need that one act of kindness to help shape the world into something better, a world filled with hope. But sadly, happiness and hope is not the only thing people can learn, because in other parts of the universe, violence and hate are celebrated, especially on Warworld, where a now motherless Mongul returns from exile. And upon making his intentions clear to the other Warzoons, showcasing his worth, he reminds the Warzoons that their kind does not protect. Power and strength is everything. Thus, the weak are irrelevant. Only the strongest can be made to rule Warworld. And that, folks, was the end of Action Comics, Annual 2022. Thank you guys for checking out my video, as it truly means the world to me. And as always, I'm your majestic sayer of words, SuperCliff, and if you guys are new to the channel, then do me a solid by smashing that like and subscribe button, and also hit that notification bell so that you'll never miss out on an upload, and so you'll always be kept up to date with your favorite top tier comics happening in the comic book world. Now tell me, what are your thoughts and opinions on this issue? Are you guys excited for more of the Warworld Saga to come? Let me know down in the comment section below. And until the next video, peace.